All right, welcome back. Today we're going to dive into a word that, man, it carries a whole lot of weight, Torah. When you hear that word, what do you think of? For a lot of us, it's just this ancient, heavy list of rules, right? But what if? What if a simple mistranslation has been hiding what it's really all about? Let's get into it. So, let me just ask you straight up. When you hear Torah or the law of the Old Testament, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it just, an impossible checklist of rules? Something super rigid, a burden, and honestly, maybe just totally irrelevant for us today? Hey, if that's you, you are not alone. That's where a lot of people start.
But what if that entire way of thinking is built on a fundamental misunderstanding? See, we're usually handed this false choice. On one side, you've got the Torah as this heavy legal code, this thing you have to follow perfectly just to earn your way to God. But the actual biblical picture, it's the complete opposite. It's loving instruction, a gift given to people after they were already saved. It was a guide for a relationship that started from day one with grace.
So you got to ask, where did we get so off track? Well, it turns out a huge part of the confusion boils down to how we've translated just one single, really powerful Hebrew word.
Okay, this is where it gets really cool. The Hebrew word Torah comes from this root word yara. And yara means to shoot an arrow, or maybe better, to point the way. So just think about that for a second. An arrow is shot at a target. Torah isn't law like a statute book. It's instruction. It's guidance. It's designed to point us toward a target, and that target is a flourishing life, a life lived in sync with God.
Once you see that, it changes how you read so much of the Bible. The scriptures themselves don't talk about Torah like it's a burden. Listen to Psalm 19. The psalmist says, the Torah is perfect, refreshing the soul, giving joy to the heart. Does that sound like an oppressive set of rules to you? No way. It sounds like a gift, a life-giving guide.
Here's a really simple way to think about it that makes it all click. Imagine a loving parent telling their little kid, hey, don't touch that hot stove. Is that parent being a tyrant restricting the kid's freedom? Of course not. It's loving instruction. It's for their protection and their good. That's the heart of Torah. It's God's protective guidance for his kid.
And this idea of loving instruction gets even clearer when you look at the context, like when and why God gave it in the first place. This wasn't some cold, sterile legal contract. It was part of a covenant of love. Think of it more like vows in a marriage.
And the order of events here is, it's everything. You have to get this. First, God acts in pure grace. He rescues Israel from slavery in Egypt. That's step one. Then he provides for them in the wilderness. Then he invites them into this intimate covenant relationship. And only then, only after all of that grace, does he give them the Torah. See, it was never the entry ticket to the relationship. It was the user manual for how to live in the relationship that grace had already started.
Let me just say that again because it's so important. Israel wasn't delivered because they kept the Torah. They were given the Torah because they had already been delivered. Grace always came first. The instruction was a gift for people who were already free, not a test to see if they could earn their freedom.
Okay, so this naturally leads to the big question, right? Where does Jesus, or Yeshua in Hebrew, fit into all of this? If Torah is this good gift, did he just show up to cancel it all out?
Well, what's great is we don't have to guess. Let's just listen to what he said himself. In the Sermon on the Mount, he's crystal clear. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. In fact, he says the complete opposite. He says, I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them.
And that word, fulfill, is so important. In our modern minds, we sometimes think it means to end or terminate, but that's not it at all. It means to fill to the full. It means to bring something to its true, intended, perfect meaning. So Yeshua didn't come to get rid of the Torah. He came to be the perfect living example of what it was pointing to all along.
And when you see that, you can trace this amazing story. God's instruction starts as something external, written on stone tablets and scrolls. Then it becomes something living, embodied in the person of Yeshua. And then, the final incredible step, through the Holy Spirit, it becomes something internal, written right on our hearts.
So you see, it wasn't abolished, it was internalized. It moved from the outside in.
And hey, this wasn't some last-minute plan B. This was the plan all along. The prophet Jeremiah talked about this hundreds of years earlier. He said God would make a new covenant where he would put his Torah, his instruction, inside our minds and write it on our hearts. This was always the goal, to move from stone to flesh, powered by his Spirit, not our own effort.
Okay, so let's get practical. What does any of this mean for us, right here, right now? Why should we even care about this ancient instruction if it's supposed to be written on our hearts anyway?
Well, because it's still packed with incredible wisdom. It's what shapes our identity as God's people. It gives us this incredible blueprint for how to live well. It points to God's character. And you can't forget, it's the foundation for the entire rest of the Bible. If you ignore it, you're missing the first part of the story. And you see this beautiful pattern of fulfillment everywhere. Just look at the biblical feasts laid out in the Torah. They weren't just random holidays. They were like prophetic dress rehearsals pointing to something bigger. Yeshua is the ultimate Passover lamb. He resurrected on the Feast of First Fruits. The Holy Spirit was poured out on the Feast of Shavuot, or Pentecost. The Torah sets up the rhythm, and Yeshua is the melody played perfectly in time. Or think about the Sabbath. So often it's seen as this really restrictive rule. But Yeshua comes along and reframes it completely. He says the Sabbath was made for us, not the other way around. He shows that it was always meant to be a gift, a dedicated time for rest, for healing, for restoration. The point of the instruction was always about helping us flourish. And this wisdom isn't just about my personal spiritual life. Not at all. In fact, the Torah lays out this truly radical blueprint for a just society. It has built-in systems for economic justice, like forgiving debts. It commands constant care for the poor, the widow, the immigrant. It demands impartial justice in the courts. It even talks about environmental care, like letting the land rest. I mean, this is deeply profound wisdom for building a healthier world, and it's thousands of years old. So when you pull back and look at the whole story, you see this incredible arc. The Torah starts as the wisdom woven into creation itself. Then at Sinai, it's given as a gift to a people already saved by grace. The prophets spend their lives calling people back to its true heart of justice and mercy. Then the Messiah comes and lives it out perfectly. And now, today, the Spirit writes that same instruction on our hearts. It's one beautiful, consistent story from start to finish.
So what's the point of it all? What's the target? Well, Yeshua himself boiled it down for us. He said everything, the entire Torah, all the prophets, it all hangs on two things. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That is the bullseye. That's the target that the arrow of Torah has always been pointing toward.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If the Torah isn't some heavy burden we're supposed to avoid, but is actually God's loving instruction, his roadmap for a truly flourishing life, then what's one piece of its wisdom you could maybe lean into today? Maybe it's about true rest, maybe it's about caring for someone on the margins, or maybe it's just about love. What's one thing you could embrace?